And you can see it has little red berries on it now. Those are the seeds. And this would have had very tiny, fine little green leaves and looked like a fern when it was green. This is asparagus. Asparagus officinale. Officinale means that was one of the plants that was originally in the Greek and the Roman identification books. So many of those are edible plants or herbal plants that were used in medicine. And so those are some of the first plants that were ever described and talked about. And so that's why that's called officinale. It was in the official book. So asparagus was also in the lily family, but it has a family of its own now. So it's in the Asparagaceae, into the asparagus family. Asparagus, of course, it comes up here, what we call wild asparagus. It comes up without being planted, is not a native plant. It's one that was brought from Europe and Asia for food, because you all know how good asparagus is and how expensive it is, and it's a spring plant. So these are from last year. Of course, they're dead, but the root is in the ground and the root will send up shoots, usually starting in April. Sometimes in April, when you come to my yard, I can collect asparagus right then, but sometimes it doesn't come till the end of April and into May. So that's when asparagus usually comes up. Asparagus plants are either male or female. The male plants are the ones that are more often eaten. The female plants, as you can see, eventually get to be pretty big. And they're very tough, very woody, so that they're not so succulent for eating as the male plants. The male plants are shorter. They come up and make the pollen. The pollen then fertilizes the eggs on the female tree or the female bush. And then the female bush will stay all summer long and make these little red berries. So those are where the seeds are for asparagus. So you can grow it from seed. In fact, all of the asparagus that is in my yard was planted by the birds. So the birds eat those seeds, and then as they go along, they poop out, they eat the fruit, they eat the berry, and the seeds are inside. And so they go along and they poop that out, and then those grow into asparagus plants in my yard. So I have asparagus without ever having to plant it. And we call it wild asparagus. In fact, between Naperville and Aurora, there used to be vast asparagus fields, because they were planted as a crop to feed people. And so when we first moved here back in 1954, people still went along the roadside between Naperville and Aurora. It was all wild farmland at that time, and picked wild asparagus along the fence rows, because all the birds would eat the berries, and they'd perch on the fences around the farms and poop the asparagus out. And so it was growing all along the edge of the roadside on Ogden Avenue. We used to drive Ogden Avenue 34 into Aurora and pick wild asparagus. Now I can do it in my own yard from the birds.
Pat, I have a question.
Yes.
Why do they change or recategorize or make new plant families?
Well, they're doing that more now because of DNA. Once they discovered DNA, and for people too, they do this. In fact, I have a girlfriend who just brought a dog, and they did the DNA on the dog because they're trying to train it, and they wanted to know what its ancestry was, and it was 14 different varieties of dog, and the most common one was the Malamute, which is a wolf dog cross from Alaska. The sled dogs are a lot of the Malamutes and Huskies, and so they could even do the DNA of your dog if you want to find out. So that's part of it. People now, instead of just looking at the plant, they were originally put in families by the kind of flower and the kind of seeds and fruits that it has. And so but now they look at it and they can see the chemicals that are in it, and they can see the DNA, and so that's why they've done some of this changing. You can't see the DNA.
Exactly.
Right, so that's why we do it. We do it by what it looks like. That's how Linnaeus started doing it. When he started naming everything, people would send him all the stuff when they discovered America. All of the plants, got sent back to Linnaeus, and he would look at them and figure out what family they were in.
Where was he located?
He was he's in Sweden, Norway, Finland, one of those.
Okay.
I'm not sure, because he was the guy that really started this binomial naming with the genus and the species and the family. And so he was the one that started that, and started by looking at the flowers and the fruits, saying these all have the same kind of flower, the same kind of fruit. So he put them together. And they do have similar, but the flowers on asparagus the flowers that make the little red berries look like little tiny yellow bells. So they do look a lot like the flowers on Solomon's seal, for instance, which is a lily. But they don't look too much like a tulip, although they have 3 petals and 3 steeples. So it does have that, but of course asparagus is quite different from onion. And so it makes sense if you want to separate those two. And so in the world of taxonomy, we have people called lumpers, which would take all of the lily things and put them all under a gigantic family. And then we have people called splitters that would say, oh, asparagus is different from onion, so let's make them into separate families now. But they are in the lily group, the big lily group, but they're not in a small lily group. So they divided the big lily group into small ones.